All right, everybody. I hope you're all doing well in this holiday season. Everybody with their blessings and challenges. Whenever anyone asks me how am I doing, I said, gotta feel grateful for the blessings and challenges. Boker tov. Ma shlomchem. So, we can never be without either of those, and we never know which is which. Sometimes things we think are blessings or challenges end up being big challenges, and sometimes we think things that are challenges that end up being big blessings. And the truth is King David has a thing there in the Psalms. You can, I always say when I'm reading scriptures from any religion or any holy book or any book of any philosopher, you can learn something from it. You don't have to believe if it's historically whatever people say it is, and no three people agree, even if they're for some same religion, on exactly where these sources come from and what their status is. So open your heart. Don't be so like, oh, I am a theist or I'm an atheist, because well, let's get a side story before we get back to the point. One of my favorite stories is in Buddha's time, people considered him a great sage, and yet he was very revolutionary to the Hindu religion. It was similar to Jesus with the Jewish religion, but not exactly the same. But, there was a lot of Hindus that wanted to kill him, and then there was a lot of people who became his followers. But this one person who was getting towards old age and had always been a big believer of God and used to say this certain one name of God all the time. And the Hindus, we don't understand it so much, but if you get into understand it, you see it's not really idol worship, but it's kind of just, they're kind of getting into this deep notion that everything in its essence is God. So sometimes they call the teacher or their in Christianity, people are familiar with the concept of calling Jesus the Son of God. In Hinduism, everything is just the Son of God. So, it's for someone who's not familiar with it, it looks a little bit strange. But when you get into it, everybody thinks that something they didn't grow up with strange. And if we have a little bit of patience, we can actually learn interesting things from other sources that were not in our immediate circle. And that's really where we're going to get to our main topic today, which is to be a peacemaker. But now, as usual with Lazer Lloyd, we got into a few sub-texts to get to the main story. So let's just go back to this one Buddha text where, so this guy who was getting old, and it's at the end of his years, and he's a big believer in God, and he always says the name of this certain God, and he never leaves his mouth. And he goes to the Buddha, and he goes, he's waiting to see that none of the students are around, no one's watching, and he says, Buddha, tell me the truth, is there really God? And so the Buddha looks at him, and he, with a straight face, he tells him, no, there is no God. And this guy is just blown away, and he leaves there startled and flustered, and wow. So a few hours later, Buddha's sitting there teaching the disciples, and so then comes this other guy who his whole lifetime he had taught everyone how foolish it is to believe in God, and that there's nothing worthwhile in any of the books. And he heard about the Buddha, that it's, people heard different things about the Buddha. He heard that the Buddha said the same thing, something similar. So he goes to the Buddha and looks around to see if none of the students are listening. And he says, right, Buddha, I'm getting old, and I just, he was getting old, so maybe he was having some second thoughts, and I'm getting old, oh boy, maybe, what if there is a God, and all these years I've been saying there isn't, and everything. So he asked the Buddha, there's no God, right? And Buddha looks at him and he says, yes, of course there's a God. So this guy has this unbelievable look on his face. He's all confused. And wow, goes away from there. Now, there was a student that actually had been listening, because this student hides behind a tree. He wants to hear every conversation because he knows the ordinary conversation of the saints, those are really holy advice. And so at the end of the day, he, comes and he admits to his teacher, the Buddha, that I'm so sorry, I was eavesdropping on you. I was listening, and I heard that you said to one person that came that there is no God. And then the other guy, you told there is a God. What am I supposed to do? He said, listen, for the first guy who was so full of faith, he really needed a little doubt, because it wasn't really deep, his spiritual journey. He was just talking. His faith was just things he had heard from his parents. It really wasn't so deep. And to get deep, you have to have some doubt to keep your spiritual journey going. And he says to the other guy, he needed a little faith because it's not so simple. And he also needed to just deepen his own spiritual experience, as opposed to just, he also grew up in a place that rejected all scripture and God. And he really he wasn't deepening his experience. So the main thing is for people to deepen their spiritual journey, and for each one it's a different answer. Now, if someone here can tell me how I can get back to this footnote all the way back of where we were. So, okay, so let me try to trace it back like this. We were discussing blessings and challenges, and oh yes, King David had a saying that one should place God before them always. That's now we have to be humble to understand that, first of all, by the time these sayings get to us translated into the different languages, you could take 3 Bibles off of the shelf at the local bookstore and you're going to get 3 different translations. Now that's just to the English, but if you go back to the source in Hebrew, the mystical tradition has a beautiful, from the Kabbalah and the Hasidic teachings, has a beautiful teaching that it says in Hebrew, the word Shaviti, Hashem, which is the no-name name for God. With the Jews, there's no name. Yehovah, there's no Yehovah. They get this thing that in the Hebrew alphabet, which is, they're taking the Yehovah, is not to be pronounced. It's just translating as that which was, that which is, that which will be. But there's no name, because in the Jewish tradition, God is not a thing somewhere else. God is everything. And there is no understanding that, and therefore there are all these different names. That particular name, what they took as Jehovah, that is relating to the all-encompassing, what you would call maybe in Hinduism, Para, Atman or Brahman, something beyond. And then there's the other name, which is Elohim, which is more relating how that the Creator pervades all of existence. And so this thing in Hebrew here, the main teaching is, when I was getting back to when people ask me how I'm doing, and I say, feeling blessed for all the blessings and the challenges. And none of us in this life can go without having either of them, but sometimes we are not aware and we just focus on one. Sometimes we either just like to focus on the blessings and we're just trying to be overly happy without taking care of our responsibilities, or sometimes we're overly sad and we're only focusing on our challenges without seeing all the blessings that are around. I mean, just look at this morning walk in the land of Israel and seeing these mountains. That is more than enough to just feel super blessed. Now, back to our translation of the Psalms. So if you just take the simple translation in Hebrew, Shaviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, I placed God before me always. But the mystical translation is Shaviti also means evenly. It's all the same. Shaveh, it's all even. So what they did was they put a comma, they put even. When you make everything, when you come to the level of acceptance that everything that is happening is just how it's supposed to happen. You're not independent of it. You're not too much to blame yourself for it, and you're not to be able to separate yourself from it. Whatever situation you're in, it's perfectly designed for you. But you shouldn't judge it. Don't judge it as, oh, this is the worst, and don't start dancing around, this is the best. There is a time to laugh and a time to cry, but it's best to say, so this teaching, the spiritual teaching is, when you accept everything in the same way. Now, acceptance does not mean that I don't have to do anything or make decisions. It just means I remain calm, I remain centered, remembering what it is. And if you do that, then it says, the rest of the sentence says, I have accepted everything. God is before me always. So when you accept everything it is, that's when you see the world, that's when you see everything as the grand design beyond understanding. And I just want to get a little joke in here, which I wanted to tell earlier on so people would laugh a little bit, but I kind of just go with the flow of what, is coming in at the moment. I don't plan these things out, so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but whoever hangs out for the end, I heard a good joke, it's good to laugh a little. If you see preachers or rabbis or imams or monks or whoever it is with too long of a face and a straight face and yelling about the teachings, you can be sure, from not only my experience, from people that I really know, saw the inside story, those people are not the people to listen to. We're not going to judge them harshly, but those are not the people to listen to. But if you see the people who are smiling or happy, those are the people to listen to, who are, a little bit light. We don't have to get too serious, too heavy. So there was this one preacher I heard on Christmas. He opened up for the young people a question and answer. So one brave boy, he said, Father, tell us, why wouldn't Jesus can't come in America in 2000, it was still 2022. Why can't Jesus come now in America? Why did it have to be 2,000 years ago? So the father looked at him, and now everyone, this is Christmas, everyone's super serious. And the father said, well, let me ask you a question, son. Do you think in America in 2022, you could find a virgin? And do you think you could find 3 wise men? So he said, how is Jesus going to come? I thought it was pretty funny. So anyway, laugh a little bit. And now I'm going to go on to the next subject of being a peacemaker. Being a peacemaker is the main thing needed in the world today. And the way to be a real peacemaker is first you have to make peace with yourself. Now, all scripture cannot specifically point the truth out to you, but it is all pointing of all the books. I will show you from all the different religions. The main teaching, the main pointing is pointing you to investigate yourself, who you are. What is your source? What is the real you? Now, there's things that we can easily look at that we might just skip over, that we're not paying attention to. For instance, if we should not place too much emphasis on our physical being, because first of all, we see that's fleeting. And for instance, something we don't focus on, when you're sleeping, who is sleeping? Who is the real you? You can see it's not the body, because when you're sleeping, somebody can come move your arm. If you're in a real deep sleep, they move your arm and you don't even pay attention to it. The you is not there. So the you is not the body. It's not this, even the mind experience isn't there in the deep sleep. So the you is something beyond all that. So you can get from that the world is not meant to focus. Your joy and your happiness is not going to get focused. It's not going to get to a consistent, maximized experience if you're solely concerned with your bodily experience. That can be proven from this sleep example. The next thing to focus is on, from dreams, we're given all these hints. We are given this challenge of being in the world, but there are things that are placed within the world to help us find signs on the trail. See, I'm going on the trailless trail, which I like, but there are always a few signs on the real trail. So in dream state, we can be in a dream and we're totally convinced that this dream is true. We're totally convinced of it, right? What happens the second you wake up? Wow, I can't believe it. That was in no way, was not real. But it seems so real. Now, what do we learn from that? That is what the ego does to us in the waking state. Our ego and that part of the mind, which is not the divine mind, but the ego mind, which takes us out of ourselves, looking for all these external experiences, thinking that's going to make us happy. It creates this illusion that this waking state is something firm and real that's going to be lasting, and it's not. It's not. Everyone sees it's not, but you get convinced, and that's why you take the blessings and the challenges. You are not able to stay balanced because you take it too much like it's the real deal, but it's not. It doesn't mean you be irresponsible, but it means you have to take everything in the perspective of how does it relate to my eternal being. And so when you start the day, you have to get to that eternal you after hopefully you've been in the deep sleep state and through the dream state into the waking state. You have to ask, who am I? And you have to taste it, but only you can taste it. There's no book or teacher that can do that for you. They can point you how to do that. So there's different methods that work for different people, and many of the enlightened beings came at different times of the world and different places of the world, targeting different types of people. And so how to actually experience the true you is through learning how to actually die in this moment. Now, that might seem a little bit morbid, but what it actually means to die in this moment is, that is the true rebirth, is to dying to all external thoughts, all external desires, fears. Give yourself a few moments of being without any connection to anything outside of what is the seer that was there when you were sleeping. Let's contact that. When you can do that, when you can actually find your way. Now, even the best of teachers can tell you what works for them, but everyone has their own way of doing it. One of the greatest teachers is explaining That in the beginning and in the end, you're always there. There is no beginning and there is no end, and there is no effort to actually be yourself. It takes the non-effort. So you can't be trying too hard, and you can't have any outside ambitions. It can't be, I'm going to be a better person today. I'm going to be, go to heaven. I'm going to get rewarded. I'm going to be enlightened. It can't have any of that stuff in it. It has to be totally pure of just a non-effort experience of just being without thought. So now each one has to try, you have to practice it on your own to get there. But when you're able to do that in the morning, that is overcoming the world. It sounds simple, but a lot of times we don't realize we're slaves to our minds, who is always telling us, oh, okay, we're up. Let's see how we can get more pleasure. Let's see how we can get more money. Let's see how we can get ahead. Let's see how we can achieve. And we start running without even knowing who we are, where we're running to. And that becomes the destruction of the world. It becomes us pushing in line. It becomes us whatever that means, pushing in line. It means honking our horns on the highway. It means arguing at work. It means not being in that peaceful state of shaviti, evenness. Let it come. Feel the flow. Let go a little bit. Try to stop controlling everything and go a little bit reverse. Most people listening to this are in the Western world. In the East, some people need to get going a little bit. It's not about East or West anymore. It's about the balance of the two. So everyone has to know what they need to do. But in general, people are just running around crazy without knowing themselves and causing a lot of damage to themselves and the world without even thinking that they are. So to be a peacemaker, which is the real blessing, you have to know about different things in the world a little bit. I mean, they're speaking about someone who in the Middle East that has the possibility to make peace between the Ukraine and Russia. Now, this person, he knows about the deep Russian history, and he knows about the Ukrainian history, and he knows some of the people involved. But without that knowledge, he's not going to be able to make peace. The same thing we have to know today, that the world is the world situation is suffering from conflict, hatred, ignorance, war, violence, mental instability. That all comes from people firstly not knowing themselves, but then we have to do a little bit more on taking some time to learn the teachings of other people's belief systems. Now, everything is, all the truth is always a paradox. So there's many teachers who, some of them for the right reasons, some of them for control reasons, will say, well, you can't learn, if you try to learn about everything, you'll know nothing. There is some element to truth in that, but we're not saying to spend all your day in 50 different places. Eventually you pick some place where you feel at this moment in your life that this particular teachings are being positive for me, having me to have inner peace and happiness and joy, and seeing the beauty in all of creation. And then maybe you might have to move on as you grow, but you have to see. But today the world is suffering more. See, the confused people in the world, they don't make the wars. It's the people who know. They know the truth. They know what God wants. They know what is, and they start making wars. And so it's okay to be a little bit confused. So I bless everyone to be a little bit confused and then get completely confused, because no one in the end really knows anything. As soon as a word is spoken, as soon as any idea is given, you're disconnecting from the truth, because the truth is something only experienced beyond words. Let's just take some teaching. Most people probably here listening are Christian. Let's just take something we might not have thought about. For instance, the most common story people know probably is with the prostitute, with Mary, and Jesus, and Jesus comes to save the prostitute from being stoned, and he sees all the people, and he says you shouldn't kill her, and he says whoever thinks that they're innocent, whoever thinks that they're innocent of sin, let them throw the first stone. Okay, so now in that story, some people, if you could make the conclusion, Jesus is defending prostitution. No. But the deeper story is really that Jesus was saying that these people were so hungry to kill this woman for her sin that they were not realizing that that real hunger was not of righteousness, but it was of many times when we make mistakes, we get joy in seeing other people mess up. Now that's something we could all focus on, whether you believe in the Bible or you're not a Christian or you are a Christian or anything. But many times we are always looking, we're so hungry to jump on someone, and we get a joy. Think about it. Try to think about it. If you're watching the news, you see someone who really messed up. Think about it. Be honest with yourself. Know yourself. Do you get a little excited by that? That you say, "Oh wow, I've done some stuff, but I never did that." And how many other times, could we get swept up in really being so quick to want to judge somebody? The root of that happening is not because we're righteous and we want to fix the world, so we want to point out someone who has made mistakes. The root of that usually is, I've done bad stuff and I don't feel good about myself, so I want to point it out to someone else. Now, here you have a conflicting teaching. If you don't understand all of the teachings of all the religions, first of all, you can find 90% of the religion in other religions. And the good truths of each religion, you can even find contradictions within that own religion. And that's not a bad thing, because different things were said for different people at different times, just like with the original Buddha story. So here, Jesus is speaking about in the Sermon on the Mount, about not just, people who kill are going to be punished in wherever, but he says also those who think badly of their brothers, or those who say, "Thou fool." Now, here we have, they're going to get the hellfire. So now, if you're not focused here we have Jesus is saying that the prostitute can be saved, and he saved her. She shouldn't be judged. She just needs another chance. And here, someone who maybe was a little sleepy, driving to work, and somebody cuts them off on the road, and they say, "You fool." And so in the second of being upset, they're going to get the hellfire, okay? So you see there's major contradictions. Now, you can explain it differently. There's many different explanations. So basically, people, at the end of the day, smile, be happy. You are not what you think you are, and you do not know anything. And no one else does. But there's lots of things that can point you to you eventually knowing yourself, and that is the way to bring peace in the world. So anyway, we're getting up to the half-hour mark, so I think if I can upload this. Blessing everybody to take it easy this holiday season, okay? Not the drinkings, not the drugs, not the overeating or over-pleasurizing, whatever you want, is not going to bring you the happiness. Try to figure out how to still your mind and go in to your own being. Try it a little bit each morning during the day, a little bit less running around crazy, thinking your happiness is somewhere else, and you will slowly, as walking through the dew, feel the wetness. You will start feeling the beingness, and you will be there. You will be beyond space and time. Love y'all.